Hello, guys. I am Jake Ellenbogen from downtownrams.com, and I decided I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to make a video on my 2017 season predictions, and I'm just going to let the world know it. So, first off, we're going to start off with the AFC East, and you're looking at a complete cakewalk, in my personal opinion, for the defending Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. I believe they got better. I don't believe they got as great as everyone is saying. It's normally not a good sign when you get hyped up to go undefeated like that. I'm seeing a lot of people say the Patriots will go undefeated. I have them at 13-3. I think New England, picking up Stephon Gilmore, although he's not my favorite cornerback in the world, picking him up, having him go alongside Malcolm Butler, who I believe is one of the best corners in football. I think he's a little underrated at this point. And the acquisition of Brandon Cooks, and I think when you look at, they got a really underrated duo of running backs, Rex Burkhead, who wasn't used as often as he should have been in Cincinnati, and Mike Gillislee, who I think the Bills really missed out letting him go. So the Patriots, I believe, go 13-3, and I believe they're making the playoffs. I don't believe, however, they have the number one seed, and I'll get to that. In the AFC East, I have the Miami Dolphins at 9-7. Miami comes into this season with a new quarterback. I don't think they expected this before the offseason program started, seeing as Jay Cutler was retired at the time and he was about to work for Fox. Unfortunately, and fortunately, Ryan Tannehill was unfortunately injured, but fortunately, the Dolphins found a replacement that is arguably a better quarterback than Tannehill. I don't really think it's arguable. I'm really high on Jay Cutler, and in this offense with Adam Gase, you have Jarvis Landry. You're looking at Devontae Parker, who I believe is going to break out. Jarvis Landry in his contract year, might I add. Guys seem to play better in their contract year. Julius Thomas, and if he ever wanted to basically revitalize his career, this is the time to do it. You're looking at, the fact of the matter is this: Julius Thomas has struggled mightily, and it's been ever since he went to the Jaguars. Big payday, yes. Production, no. Not the production he had with Peyton Manning, although I don't believe it was all because of Peyton Manning. I believe Gase had something to do with that. Very interested in seeing what him and Cutler do, and then they have Jay Ajayi, who is just a great back. They have a nice backup, in my opinion, in Kenyon Drake. But then I think you look at the defense, and the defense, yes, it's a tough loss. They lost Raekwon McMillan, a second-round pick out of Ohio State. They won't have TJ McDonald until half the season due to a DUI that had him suspended half the season. They signed him to a 4-year contract extension, so that says a lot about what they believe in him. And then I think you have to look at the fact that this defensive line I think is very good, and I really love the move getting probably my top pass rusher, calling me crazy, in Charles Harris. I believe that the man out of Missouri is in for a good year. They got William Hayes, and as a Rams fan, I think William Hayes still has some good football left in him. Just wasn't a scheme fit for Wade Phillips' defense in LA. So definitely there. Then you have Cam Wake and Jordan Phillips, who I like a lot. So there's pieces there. I believe the Dolphins are going 9-7. They made the playoffs last year. I think they're more talented than last year. They have a tougher schedule, though. Still, I have them sneaking in the playoffs as a wild card. Moving on in the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills, I have them going 2-14. I'm not gonna lie. I think the Bills are terrible. I don't know what they're doing. Actually, I do. I think that their mission is to blow up the entire team and start over with new head coach Sean McDermott. It appears as though Tyrod Taylor, yes, he's the starter for now, but they seem to really like Nathan Peterman, a quarterback they got on, I believe, day 3 of the draft from Pittsburgh. He looked like at sometimes the most pro-ready quarterback. To some, I wasn't a huge fan of him, but the Bills might like him. I don't know for their future. I think they're gonna. I wouldn't say tank, but I don't think they're gonna be very good. Obviously, having a 2-14 record, and I think they're gonna be picking in the Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, whoever you have in your top three. That's not necessarily my top three, but that's the public opinion. I think they'll be picking in that top three category. And then lastly, I have the Jets going 1-15. It sucks because they have a really good defense. I love the acquisition of Jamal Adams. They did the same thing. They got Jamal Adams the same way they got Leonard Williams, my two best players in their respective drafts, and they waited and they got them both at the 6th pick when they were probably the best player in the draft. Jamal Adams, I had an astronomical grade on. Scouting him and Leonard Fournette, I had them 1A, 1B. Both out of LSU, if that tells you anything. But yeah, I like the move getting Jamal Adams. It stinks because the underlying factor is they don't have an offense, and I think you look at Josh McCown, and while he's a solid backup court, solid journeyman starter, you don't really want him to start. I actually like Bryce Petty, but he's coming off an injury, or not coming off, he's still injured, of course. And Christian Hackenberg, I actually had as an undrafted free agent coming out of the draft. I couldn't understand that pick. I still don't understand it today, and which is why I have the Jets going 1-15. No offense, not going to do much. I'm sorry, but Jermaine Kearse isn't going to basically move the needle. So that is my AFC East. There you have it. Moving on to the AFC North, and I believe this is not even up for grabs as well. I think the Steelers have this division. I have them going 12-4. You have to look at the facts. Ben Roethlisberger, the Killer Bees with Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown. You may hate them, but you got to love how talented they are. Ben Roethlisberger's in for a monster season. He's got a nice young quarterback watching him on the sideline, so he has to set that example. That is Josh Dobbs, who I absolutely love. We'll get to him probably in the future, later on. I don't expect him to play this year, and if he does, bad news for the Steelers, because as much as I love Josh Dobbs, you don't want to see Big Ben hurt if you want to make the playoffs and if you want to make the Super Bowl. Mainly the Super Bowl because I believe they're making the playoffs. So they get Le'Veon Bell back after holding out. Martavis Bryant is back off of his suspension. He has been reinstated by league, and he's ready to go. I believe he's kind of a number one receiver, so you could make the argument the Steelers have two number one receivers. They drafted Juju Smith-Schuster. They drafted a running back I absolutely love in James Conner. I forgot about their first round pick. Or I didn't forget, but I didn't mention him, and that is T.J. Watt. He is going to have an immediate impact. He is going to be up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Very solid player. Like him a lot. And when you have players, you have athletes like Ryan Shazier and then Artie Burns, and then you go and I mean, I wouldn't say they really bought low because I'll say they bought low. The Steelers ended up, they went out and they got Joe Hayden in free agency after he was cut from the Browns, and I think that's going to be a huge deal. They have an underrated young gun safety in Sean Davis, and Mike Mitchell still plays at a high level, so definitely, expect the Steelers to I definitely expect the Steelers to have a good season. And moving along with the Baltimore Ravens, I believe you're looking at an 8-8 team. Too many injuries. I don't trust Joe Flacco's back, and I sure as hell don't trust who's behind him. I don't believe Ryan Mallett is NFL quarterback material. So I have them at 8-8. I don't really love the team. I think they have some pieces there. I really like the move of getting Tyus Bowser later in the draft. But overall, I don't know. I really like Marlon Humphrey. I don't know how NFL ready he is. So that'll be something to see. I have them coming in second place at 8-8. I think they're a good football team, but the injuries definitely killed them. So I'm gonna go with that. And I honestly I think losing Dixon, I think that's gonna hurt. I really do. So moving along, the Cincinnati Bengals. I am going 4-12. I think this year they finally they just hit a wall, and it's a good thing because for Bengals fans, Marvin Lewis hasn't won you a playoff game. What, 15 years? It's time. So if they don't do anything this year, which I don't believe they will, Marvin Lewis is gone. It's just kind of like what the Rams fans had to go through. Jeff Fisher, consistent 7-9, 8-8 to 6-10 area. Eventually, that 1 year, the 4-12 year, which I have Cincinnati going, that was a straw that broke the camel's back, and I think that's ultimately what ends up happening. I think you're looking at a nice, a nice team maybe with a new coach. He's got some nice pieces there, whoever the future coach is, because I believe there will be a new coach in Cincinnati. But yeah, I really like Joe Mixon. I think he could have a good year. I soured on him earlier, and I've kind of grown to like him a little bit as a player this year. So we'll see. John Ross, there's definitely some concern right off the bat. I mean, he's having injury problems. That was kind of his biggest problem. So we'll definitely see there. And then I have the Cleveland Browns going 3-13. I really hope they're better than that because I really like Deshaun Kaiser. He was my number 2 quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes in the draft. I love Kaiser. I really want to see him succeed. I think he's got some nice pieces there with Corey Coleman and Kenny Britt. They got David Njoku. And then you look on the other end, Isaiah Crowell. Then you look on the other side of the ball. They get Myles Garrett, who unfortunately today, as I'm recording this on a Wednesday right before opening day tomorrow, the Chiefs and Patriots. Myles Garrett has been ruled, hasn't been ruled out, but he has reportedly going to miss time with an ankle injury. So wish him the best of luck getting back as soon as possible. So that is where I have the Browns. I love the moves they made in the draft. I think they're very underrated, especially getting Jabril Peppers where they did. Really like that pick. The Browns, they're a team. Hugh Jackson's going to get them in order. Really hope they keep Kaiser and they don't decide to delve into the quarterback realm because I think they get a guy like Arden Key, another pass rusher on that team. Or maybe wide receiver Equanimus St. Brown. I probably butchered his spelling from Notre Dame. I think he could definitely help them, as well as maybe a Calvin Ridley from Alabama or Cortland Sutton from SMU. Just getting that extra playmaker in there could make all the difference. So that is the AFC North. And I only have the Steelers making the playoffs out of the AFC North. So if you're doing the math at home, we have 3 AFC playoff teams so far. We have the Patriots, we have the Dolphins, and we have the Steelers. Now we're moving on to the AFC South. Huge fan of the Tennessee Titans this year. Probably the biggest out there, and I'm not a Titans fan. The Tennessee Titans, I have going 14-2. I know, you guys are crazy. I'm crazy, and you guys think I'm crazy. Whatever. Marcus Mariota is the best quarterback outside of the Big Big Four. He is so talented. Besides the fact that he is a monster dual threat, the main thing that really stands out to me is his 34 touchdown to 0 interception ratio in the red zone. That's huge, and that's only going to get better with the addition of Corey Davis, who they got 5th overall, with the addition of Taywan Taylor, who they got a huge fan of his out of Western Kentucky. And they got Jonnu Smith, a tight end out of Florida International that is he's very slept on, but him and Delaney Walker are going to be a excellent duo. Just so many weapons there. Very underrated offensive line when you have Taylor Lewan, and you look at on the right side you have Jack Conklin, who they got early in the draft last year, and then You have Quentin Span. So there's some guys there, and then you have to Derek Morgan's on the other side of the ball. They added Adoree Jackson, who is going to be really fun to watch. They signed Logan Ryan, who I really like that move, and then they got Jonathan Cyprian, who he played for the Jaguars, and it seemed like everyone thought he was amazing on the Jaguars, and that was like the most overlooked move of the entire offseason for Tennessee. Tennessee only got better, and with DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry, and the way David Fluellen looked, I know you're probably laughing, but David Fluellen as the third guy in preseason looked really good. They have a lot of talent, and I didn't even mention the acquisition of Eric Decker in the offseason program. So definitely high on them. Obviously, 14-2. I know teams don't normally do that. I have them winning the Super Bowl. So Tennessee 14-2. You heard it here first. Houston Texans, I have going 8-8, and I think the way they can preserve that is if they start Tom Savage. I think they have an outstanding defense, but where it all kind of falls apart, I think their offense. I think Tom Savage is good enough for an 8-8, 9-7, 7-9 type of team. I think if they start Deshaun Watson, that would be a mistake. He is not ready. And I think Tom Savage gives them the best chance to win football games. I liked what they did picking up Dante Foreman out of Texas. I think he's a really good football player, and eventually he could be the starter if they decide to trade Lamar Miller. But overall, I wasn't a huge fan of Deshaun Watson coming out of college. I gotta stand by it. I didn't think he looked all that in preseason. He had that one game, he showed some flashes, but overall was not impressed. So I think Tom Savage actually is a little underrated. I'm not saying he's a all-world quarterback, but he can get you that 8-8, and at least it's something to build off of going in the second year with your hopeful franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson. And obviously the re-signing of DeAndre Hopkins will be a nice thing to look forward to. So moving along in the AFC South, I have the Indianapolis Colts going 8-8 as well. Andrew Luck will not play Week 1 against the Rams. I don't know when he'll be back. Shoulder surgery is serious. I know Cam Newton is having the same. He had the same surgery and he's back. Some people deal with it more than others. Andrew Luck might have gotten it more as like a need, whereas Cam Newton may have gotten it more as a precautionary thing, or just something to help with. But I'm worried for Andrew Luck. I'm worried that the damage has been done. Ryan Grigson did not put anything around him besides T.Y. Hilton, and I think ultimately I think you're seeing possibly a derailing of one of the biggest draft prospects in the history of the draft, and it's really unfortunate. But I really like their GM Chris Ballard. I believe he'll get this back on track. But there's a lot of repair that needs to be done with Ryan Grigson. The draft pick of Malik Hooker, getting Quincy Wilson in there. It's really good corner out of Florida. Getting in Marlon Mack to help in the run game. I think they're 2 years away from being really good. Don't sleep on Chris Ballard. He's one of the better GMs, and he just started. Moving on, Jacksonville Jaguars I have at 7-9. I might be the only one here, but I believe that Blake Bortles is a solid quarterback. I have to. I bought into him, and while everyone wants to bag on him, he did throw for 35 touchdowns 2 years ago. Look, I get garbage time. I've heard that excuse a million times. That's a lot of garbage time to throw 35 touchdowns. Regardless, he's got the best running back prospect I've seen in quite some time in Leonard Fournette. Again, I said I had an astronomical grade on him. He is going to help immediately for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They instantly get better. They have a great defense on paper. I'm just going to say on paper because I love the acquisition of Calais Campbell. It hurt Arizona a lot, and it helped them a lot. I don't think Arizona realizes how big Calais Campbell was for them. Um, but Calais Campbell is going to be an excellent fit in Jacksonville. And then they have, obviously from previous years, they signed, Malik. So, I think for whatever reason his name escapes me. Malik Jackson. There you go. They signed Malik Jackson. They signed Calais Campbell, as I mentioned. But one of the biggest signings, and again, I think people now are starting to realize his name. He's one of my favorite cornerbacks in all of football, and I thought the Texans made a mistake letting him go. It's AJ Bouye. I think Bouye, paired up with Jalen Ramsey, is going to be disastrous for other teams, not the Jaguars. I think they're in a good spot. A lot of people don't realize how good Paul Posluszny played. He was actually in the top 10 for linebackers per Pro Football Focus in 2016. And then, you have a Telvin Smith, who's a leader. He was named a captain, and he's a great player. So, and then I'm not even talking about Miles Jack, who, if he's finally healthy and is ready to go. This defense is going to be good. However, the offense, I really like Fournette. And I like Bortles. I just don't know if there's enough around Bortles outside of Fournette to get over the hump of like a 7-9. I think a 7-9 would be a good season for the Jaguars. They're not making the playoffs. I don't believe that. But 7-9 would be a good season. The way people talk about Blake Bortles, it sounds like a miracle. But I think 7-9 is very realistic. On to the AFC West. Oakland Raiders, I have it at 11-5. I think people are getting way too crazy. I heard some guy mention them at 15-1. You got to look at the facts here. Their secondary looked awful in preseason, and it wasn't just against the Cowboys. It wasn't just against the Rams. It was all of preseason. Looked really bad. They need to get that fixed. I don't know how they get that fixed. The season's starting now. Starts tomorrow. So 11-5 is where I have them, and that's only because the offense, which I believe had to come back in about 8 of their wins last year. They're going to have to ball out, and I believe they do for 11-5. Moving on, Kansas City Chiefs. You're looking at 9-7, I believe. I have I have the Oakland Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs both making the playoffs. Yep, it's kind of the same playoff picture for the AFC, except you add the Titans, over the Texans. But I like that. I think the Chiefs. I do think they're gonna start. Sooner or later, I do think they're gonna start Patrick Mahomes. I don't think people should be shocked. I also don't think people should be. I forget who it was. I think it was Steve Mariucci on NFL Network, and he wouldn't pick the Chiefs to make the playoffs, and one of the reasons he mentioned is without Spencer Ware. Now, I like Spencer Ware, but you gotta watch Kareem Hunt's film from Toledo. The dude is phenomenal, and I compared him to Spencer Ware, which is ironic when I said that when they drafted him, but Kareem Hunt is very underrated, and I really started to come on when I watched the Senior Bowl and watched the way he ran. Very talented back. Kareem Hunt is definitely going to be a terror, as well as Tyreek Hill. And, I don't believe they have a ton there, which is why I don't believe they get over the hump of 9 wins, but they have a nice defense, and that's why I believe the Chiefs go 9-7. And then you're looking at the Los Angeles Chargers. Yes, the Los Angeles Chargers. I have them going 6-10. It seems like every year the poor Chargers are bit with the injury bug. And this year they lost Forrest Lamp, which is a huge loss. Second round pick, great talent. So they're definitely going to miss him. I think you're looking at a team that has a lot of talent. I don't see it. I don't see them getting over. I don't see them getting over the hump with a new coach. I'm just not as high on them as some people. I think they have a nice defense. Their offense is still they're still the Chargers. They're still the underachieving team. I have yet to see them win those games that they completely, blow. And they did it last year. It's going to be a process. I think the Chargers are a team to watch out for later on. They got some great pieces. They signed Melvin Ingram to a long-term deal. They have Joey Bosa. They have guys like Jatavis Brown, Denzel Perryman, and then, they brought in Casey Hayward, who was phenomenal last year. Jason Verrett is finally healthy. They have a Desmond King. So, that definitely looks good there. And Jaleel Adai is also a really underrated player. But, Keenan Allen, he's a ticking time bomb. I mean, he is always hurt, so I'm just waiting for him to go down. And Phillip Rivers is without his number one receiver again. So the Chargers I have at 6-10. I have the Broncos at 5-11. I don't think Vance Joseph is the best coach in the world. I know it may seem unfair, but you know what? The Dolphins' defense last year wasn't very good. So for those people saying that he's a defensive guru, I wouldn't use guru. I think the quarterback situation was a complete blunder on his part. I thought Kyle Sloter deserved to make the 53-man roster and back up Trevor Siemian. I believe he should have probably been the running to start because he looked really good in preseason. And, I mean, Paxton Lynch looked terrible. I think, at the same time, I do like Siemian. I think Siemian's solid, but I just don't like I don't like the running game. I like, D'Angelo Henderson, but aside from that, that's probably it. I'm not a huge fan of C.J. Anderson, and Devontae Booker's hurt. I like the receivers, but at the end of the day, I just think that this is another underachieving Broncos team, kind of like last year, that doesn't make the playoffs. So, and especially, the defense without Wade Phillips, I think actually will take a hit. So moving on to the NFC, and again, to repeat, the AFC playoff picture goes number 1 seed, we have the Tennessee Titans. The number 2 seed, we have the New England Patriots. Number 3 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 4 is the Oakland Raiders. The number 5 seed goes to the Miami Dolphins, and the number 6 seed goes to Kansas City Chiefs. NFC East, I have the New York Football Giants winning the division at 10-6. I believe that the Giants are going to make the Super Bowl this year. I think that offense and that defense, the only problem with the Giants, the only problem I can really think of outside of the fact they don't have a top flight running back, and I think they'll get away with it. The only problem is Eric Flowers. I think he is terrible. I don't know how he's starting. And I think every Giants fan would agree with me. I think that's the one thing that's holding them back. But you have to look at the fact of the matter. It's Eli Manning. They have Paul Perkins. They got a Wayne Gallman in there. Shane Vereen. You love Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, he's the best, receiver in football. Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard. And then, they brought in the tight end Evan Ingram to go along with Jalen Adams. I think, with those guys, I really like their offense for Eli Manning. And then the defense, you look at, Damon Snacks Harrison, you look at JPP, you look at Olivier Vernon, and they drafted Dalvin Tomlinson. So that defensive line will surely look good and won't miss a beat without Jonathan Hankins, who I think foolishly moved on. And then, of course, their secondary is their secondary. They have arguably the best safety in the league in Landon Collins. They have Darius Thompson, who was a former ball hawk at Boise State, dealt with some injuries last year, but he's back in the fray. They have a third safety that's really good in Andrew Adams. Andrew Adams is very underrated. He played some good time last year. I don't think people realize how well he played. And then you look at the three corners. Janoris Jenkins, Janoris Jenkins, and then you have Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, and then you have Eli Apple. So, I mean, Apple, we'll wait and see, but that's a good-looking secondary. The running backs, Giants fans should be excited for B.J. Goodson, former Clemson linebacker. He is in for a breakout year. Um, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him because I liked him in the draft. And then you look, and the Eagles fall. I have them at 9-7. I think they're a better team, but I think they're getting a little overrated. I mentioned it on the Downtown Rams podcast. It seems as though everyone wants the Eagles to be great, and they're just not quite there yet. They added Alshon Jeffrey, and that's a lot to be excited about. And yes, they will have Lane Johnson, who it's worth mentioning. Carson Wentz was undefeated when Lane Johnson was his starting right tackle, but I still don't love the secondary. And adding Ronald Darby helps, but it doesn't fix the entire problem. Um, their secondary is not amazing. They probably won't have Sidney Jones, who they drafted, until later on the season, if at all. Probably just going to redshirt him after that brutal Achilles injury. And they have, two great safeties in Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod. But outside of that, I think this is a team that, while their defense might be feisty, I think their corners are really going to bring them down. You got to love Fletcher Cox. You got to love Brandon Graham, Kendricks. But I still think the corners are going to bring them down. So I have them at 9-7. Dallas Cowboys, guess what? They're back at 8-8. I know you guys think I'm crazy, whatever. I don't like the Cowboys this year. I don't. I think Ezekiel Elliott is possibly going to miss weeks 2 through 8, which is awful. I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with it. It's awful for the Cowboys losing a back like that. I think people are overrating the offensive line a little bit. The offensive line, you need to keep in mind, lost Ronald Leary, and they lost their right tackle, who retired. So, this isn't the same offensive line, and sorry, their right tackle is Doug Free. But this isn't the same offensive line, and I do think you could see an issue there. I like Dak Prescott. I think he's very talented, but I think even without Zeke, I think he'll show that he is human, and I think he'll turn the ball over a little bit. I also think, the Taco Charlton pick didn't fix every issue on the defensive line. I don't like the Cowboys' defense that much. There's way too much, inexperience in the secondary. I mean, you have to keep in mind that they lost Barry Church, they lost J.J. Wilcox, they lost Mo Claiborne, and they lost Brandon Carr. Those are their secondary starters outside of the one guy they kept, Byron Jones. But that is going to be way too hard. I love Chidobe Awuzie, but I'm not a huge fan of the rest. I like Jordan Lewis, but I don't know how well he can play right off the bat. And Xavier Woods shows promise, but these are rookies. You're going to see some growing pains there. I just don't buy into the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't see how they're going to be able to stop offenses like the Giants and like the Eagles. So moving along, finally, I have the Washington Redskins finish 6-10. Looking at the preseason, I could be completely wrong, but the Redskins look awful, and it looks like they're really missing a piece. Sean McVay. Their offense just doesn't look good. Terrell Pryor is the only thing that you could really be excited about. He just looks like a man amongst boys, especially in practice. Kirk Cousins, obviously, on his franchise tag. The rumor of him, moving on to San Francisco after the season, I think is very real. I think to do that, I think he's going to need a good season in Washington. But yeah, I'm not huge on Washington this year. Their defense is a little shaky for me, especially now. Sua Cravens might retire. It just doesn't look good. So the Redskins I have at 6-10. I'm comfortable with that. I don't have the Eagles making the wild card. I have the Giants going 10-6. NFC North time. I only have one team making it, and it is the Green Bay Packers. 10-6. Sorry, but they have Aaron Rodgers. I don't think they got a ton. I don't think they got a whole lot better. They did get Devon House, who I like. I think he played well when he was in Green Bay. Then got a little overpaid in Jacksonville and just kind of struggled. Um, but I think he's a nice fit there. They brought in Ahmad Brooks, who his best football's behind him, and I mean, they brought in Martellus Bennett, Lance Kendricks, and then they drafted Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones to back up their running back that they converted from wide receiver Ty Montgomery. I just don't love this Green Bay Packers team. And you don't look at this and think, wow, Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to win a Super Bowl with this. You look at this like Aaron Rodgers is going to have to be, he's going to have to play at the best level he's ever played at to win a Super Bowl. I don't think they really, built up this secondary. That was the biggest issue last year. I like Quentin Rollins. I don't think that, looking at this, I don't think they've really improved. Kevin King, I don't think is going to do a whole lot, and he's still somewhat raw, so that's something to keep in mind. I just don't really love the look of this team. This looks like another Rodgers, is going to have to play at an elite level just to get them to 10 wins, which is where I have them. 10-6 for the Green Bay Packers. Minnesota Vikings, I have a 9-7. I have them just missing. I think Sam Bradford is going to have another good year. And I think, the Vikings defense will give them a chance. I think ultimately it's going to come down to probably the last stretch of the year. Aaron Rodgers is going to knock them out of the playoffs. He's just too good. And I think as great as the Vikings defense could be, Aaron Rodgers, you just can't bet against. So 9-7 for the Vikings. 8-8 for the Detroit Lions. The Lions worry me. Right now they're starting Greg Robinson, I believe, at left tackle. And they just paid Matthew Stafford all that money. He's now the highest paid player in the history of the NFL. That is like literally, having a mansion, and for your home security system, you buy it off the internet, like for like a used security system. Like that's really what it's for. That's what it's like, because you have this mansion that you spend all this money on in Matthew Stafford, and you're having a player that has shown the inability to play in the NFL at his position, not even at a high level, like at a level at all, in Greg Robinson. So it's just going to be a disaster, and hopefully he makes out of the season in one piece. And then lastly in that division, a lot of people think they're going to be picking in the top 3 again. I do not. I think the Bears are going to win at least 5 games. I think they go 5-11. I think Mitchell Trubisky comes in towards the end of the year, shows a lot of promise. Defense just doesn't have enough. They have guys like Terrell Freeman, and I mean, you gotta love, that. But I mean, overall, I think that they're missing some pieces, and I don't love their secondary either. And definitely, if they can go out and get Mitchell Trubisky a number 1 receiver, unless Kevin White really comes into his own this year and stays healthy, they're going to need one. So I would definitely say, Trubisky gets a nice 5-11 season under his belt. That way, he gets the idea, like he can win football games, but also goes through the tough times, kind of gets used to it, acclimated to it. And then next year they come back and maybe go 8-8 or 9-7 or something, depending on what they do in the draft. Moving into the NFC South territory, this may come as a shock. I don't see why. I think you could pick any one of these teams to win the NFC South, aside from maybe the Carolina Panthers. I'm not as high on them as a lot of people. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have going 11-5. I think, when you look at their team, the acquisitions of Deshaun Jackson, O.J. Howard, the draft pick of, Chris Godwin, who I really liked in the draft, I think the only issue I had with them is they didn't take one of the really entertaining, one of those really talented running backs that were there. They didn't really take anybody, but they did just sign T.J. Ward, and they already had a decent defense. Vernon Hargraves is starting to look like the cornerback that I scouted and I really liked coming out of the draft. So we will see. Quan Alexander is even in the top 10. If you were in Las Vegas right now, you could bet on the Defensive Player of the Year. He's in the top 10 for bets. Then they have, Levante David and Gerald McCoy. So there are obviously players there. And I think Tampa Bay, with Jameis Winston at the helm and Dirk Cutter, I think they get over the hump, finally getting that playoff conversation, make the playoffs. I think they win a couple games, maybe. 11-5, good record. That's where I have Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then I have the Atlanta Falcons at 10-6, also making the playoffs. I think this is going to be a defensive-minded Atlanta team. I think this is when you look at Dan Quinn finally taking over and his ideology transferring over. They got it. They brought in Steve Sarkisian. I don't really know why. I don't really think too highly of him. Not in a bad way. I'm just, I don't think he's amazing or anything like that. Not like a Kyle Shanahan. So the Falcons come in. I don't think Matt Ryan's gonna, skip. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna miss a complete beat. I don't think he'll be an MVP type of Matt Ryan, but I think he's going to be like a Matt Ryan you've seen in the past, top 15 quarterback easily. And you have Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, that dangerous duo in the backfield, Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, and then you have Taylor Gabriel on top of Austin Hooper. That looks good. I really love the addition of Dontari Poe on the defense, and they got Tack McKinley, so I definitely think this defense is really going to look good. And one thing to keep in mind, Desmond Trufant is finally healthy again in a contract year nonetheless, so definitely interested to check that out. So I have the Falcons making the playoffs. New Orleans Saints I have at 9-7. Look, Drew Brees, great defense. They finally they addressed it. Sheldon Rankins is going to be healthy, so it'll be nice to see Sheldon Rankins there. Unfortunately, Nick Fairley is not. But then they got Marcus Lattimore, who is going to instantly help them in the secondary, and they got Ryan Ramczyk, and I think he was a good pick. Another tackle. So I think trading Brandon Cooks, while it seemed rough, I think overall, excuse me. I think overall, trading Brandon Cooks, it opens up the door for Michael Thomas to really assume control of that number one spot. He looked phenomenal last year. I was a huge fan of him coming out of the draft. Didn't run the fastest 40 time, but then showed you exactly why 40 time doesn't always matter. So him, yes, they will be without Willie Snead for about 3 games because of his suspension for the DUI. And then they actually, interesting signing, they got Ted Ginn, who is going to be that deep threat. I mean, I won't go as far as he's going to be Brandon Cooks, but he's going to be that deep threat guy, take the top off defense. I think you're looking at like an Austin Carr. A lot of people don't realize that the Patriots cut him after having a phenomenal preseason and camp, being raved about. They cut him. He's going with Drew Brees in New Orleans, so it may take him a little bit to get acclimated to the playbook, but once he does, he could definitely be a factor. But yeah, I have the Saints at 9-7. That crowded backfield, I like Alvin Kamara to kind of maintain control of the majority of the touches, since he's such a force out of the backfield, whether it be as just a running back or a receiving back. And then, the Carolina Panthers, I have an 8-8. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to have a good year. I think, getting Christian McCaffrey is definitely going to help. Curtis Samuel is definitely going to help. They still have John Stewart, the running back. Cam Newton is coming off of shoulder surgery, so we will see about how well that works out. Kelvin Benjamin looks like a monster, despite the fact he looked really fat in training camp pictures that we saw. So it will definitely be interesting. I think Carolina, you're looking at 8-8. So that's where I have them at the bottom of the division. And now finally the NFC West, and we're gonna wrap this up here. The Seattle Seahawks. I couldn't agree with Chris Sims anymore. If you guys watch Sims and Lefko podcast, Chris Sims has said for the last 2 to 3 years, Seattle has not been a legit Super Bowl contender. I firmly agree with that. I think they've been a little overrated based off the fact they have guys like Russell Wilson, guys like Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor. However, this year it's different. Russell Wilson has considerably looked a ton better as a quarterback. I believe this is the year he could really break out. I think the offensive line got a little bit better. A little bit, not amazing yet, but a little bit better. And then, of course, you have to mention the acquisition of Sheldon Richardson is just huge for them. Yes, they traded Cassius Vaughn, who a lot of people, or Cassius Marsh, a lot of people, are going to knock him or not even know about that trade. That trade happened. He's going to the Patriots. He'll probably really thrive there. But yeah, Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Doug Baldwin is one of the more underrated receivers in football. The Seattle Seahawks are going to be a force to be reckoned with. I have them at 12-4, and then I have my Los Angeles Rams. I have them at 11-5. I think it's crazy. I know you think it's crazy. I think it's crazy. I just looked at the schedule. I had them originally at 10-6. I had to give them a win. I think the addition of Sammy Watkins, I think, really is going to help this offense. Just him being out there, just him existing is going to help a guy like Cooper Kupp, a guy like Robert Woods, a guy like Todd Gurley, whether it be Justin Davis, Malcolm Brown, definitely help Jared Goff. Just get guys open. And Cooper Kupp already creates tons of separation just off his route running. He doesn't round anything off. He's 24 years old. He looks like he's been in the league for 7 years running routes. Just phenomenal talent. We really can't wait to see him. Football is going to enjoy him. Sammy Watkins is looking for a second chance before he hits the free agent market. I don't believe he'll even hit that market. I think he's going in for a monster season in Los Angeles, and he will be with the Rams for the foreseeable future, coming off a contract extension. His teammate from Buffalo, who he joined in Los Angeles, Robert Woods, I think he is going to be pretty good for the Rams. I think the Rams have weapons on offense, and look, I haven't even brought up Gerald Everett, who I believe is the best tight end on the roster, and who could end up being a top 5 tight end in the next 3 years. They consider him their Jordan Reed, and when you watch him, it's hard to see why you can't see that. I think he could honestly be better. And then Jared Goff, it all comes down to this, but look, Jared Goff has been around guys for the first time in his NFL career. He's been around guys that know the position. He's been around guys that know scheme fit. He's been around guys that just know offense. Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Greg Olson. Those guys just know offense. And I think he is going... I'm not going to say he's going to light the world on fire, but I think, 3,700 yards and over 22 touchdowns, I think, is very reasonable. And then you look at the defense, and the defense, is employed by none other than Wade Phillips, and it has guys like Aaron Donald, when he returns, of course. Aaron Donald, Robert Quinn, Connor Barwin, Michael Brockers, Alec Ogletree, Mark Barron. You have Trumaine Johnson. You have Kayvon Webster, who is kind of a guy that they bought low on, but they could really get a lot out of him. Was buried on the Denver Bronco depth chart, so he has a chance to really show something this year. And then they have LaMarcus Joyner and the hidden superstar on this team, and that is Mo Alexander. Mo Alexander, first year starting, was great last year. I believe he'll really have another really good year, and I just think that this Rams team is better than the 4-12 record showed last year. 10 of their 12 losses last year were under 4 minutes, and it came down to one score. So This is a team that was in it last year, and maybe some coaching decisions were a little off. Those will get fixed this year. Maybe some, and I've said this about Greg Williams, some over anxiousness, some recklessness. I believe Wade Phillips, while he blitzes just as much as Greg Williams, or maybe not just as much, maybe even more. He's more controlled. He has a scheme. He has a plan. Wade Phillips is a very brilliant coach, and he's been doing it for 40 years. So he's probably the best defense coordinator in football. That's why I believe the Rams are going to go 11-5, and finish in the playoffs. And they're not going to win the division because I have the Seattle at 12-4, but the Rams go 11-5. Then I have Arizona at 7-9. Arizona is about to hit that wall. They still somewhat avoid completely collapsing because of the amount of talent that they have. They got Budda Baker. They got Hassan Reddick. Then, you look at, what they got on the offensive side of the ball. They still have Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown, Jerron Brown's coming into his own. David Johnson's the best running back in football. So, you just have to look, and Patrick Peterson, Honey Badger. So it's definitely going to be interesting. One guy that no one talks about, Marcus Golden, phenomenal pass rusher. So the Cardinals have pieces there. I believe it comes down to Carson Palmer. I'm just not willing to buy into him to finish a 16-game season, as old as he is. So I believe the Cardinals finish 7-9. I think that's a decent season for the Cardinals. As long as you keep it in perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And then the San Francisco 49ers, I think people are getting way too hyped, and they want to get, all over the Kyle Shanahan bandwagon. I think they finished 3-13. And the reason is because I don't quite see how their quarterback, whoever it is, whether it's, and right now, it looks like it's going to be Brian Hoyer, but they really like C.J. Beathard. I think they did, they made some great moves. I think Solomon Thomas is an animal. I love DeForest Buckner from last year. I really like Eric Armstead from the year before. Reuben Foster is a monster. And, they have Jaquiski Tart, who's very talented. Eric Reed, Jimmy Ward. But the thing I keep looking at is this offense. Who is going to catch the football aside from Pierre Garçon? And the main question, will Carlos Hyde stay healthy? They were really banking on Joe Williams, the running back that they got. Joe Williams will not play this season. He was IR'd before the cut down, so therefore he will not have eligibility to be taken off the injured reserve list. Therefore, he is out. And it would be Matt Breida backing up. So I don't see it. I really don't. I think C.J. Beathard ends up being the starter moving forward, and that kind of propels them either into a Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen era next season, or a Kirk Cousins era. So we'll see. And as I said, if you missed it, my Super Bowl prediction, Tennessee Titans over the New York Giants. I know it's crazy. I know it has no Patriots or anything we're accustomed to seeing. But that's what I believe. Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed, go follow me on Twitter, JKBogan DTR, and that is my tag. And then on Facebook, you can just look up Jake Ellenbogen. I have my own fan page because I'm cool like that. And if you want to support Downtown Rams, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you guys again. And, this has been really fun. And I'll be putting out more videos like this depending on, the feedback. So thank you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy the NFL season. Later.